Say thank you to all of you this year, and sorry both. This was without a doubt the hardest semester I've ever gone through personally, and it was just absolutely torture. And I felt really bad not being here, but at the same token, there was never a thought of me being here. And I think very quickly it put things in perspective of, yes, it's finance, but finance is just a part of, even though it may be a very big part of life, it is just a part of life. And there are things that are much more important than finance. And I hope you all got that. Some of you may want to put a little more emphasis on finance than you did, but I think that we all understand that finance is not everything. What I do want to talk about is what you've learned, not just in this class, but within the School of Business over your 4 years now. And we're going to go very quickly because we didn't leave enough time, as a shocker, to get through everything. But I do want to hit a couple things from every area of finance, or every area of business we looked at. So in accounting was probably your first business class, I'm guessing, for most of you. And what did you learn in accounting? And this isn't a review for the field exam, major field exam or anything. But think back and what did you learn in accounting? And one of the things I think you learned in accounting was that it's important to keep track of things. And a balance sheet. We all have balance sheets. I'm not going to necessarily talk about company balance sheets here. I want to talk about your own personal balance sheet. What assets do you have on your own personal balance sheet, and how do they matter? Okay, so some of the things I would put down, if I were thinking down here, you're going to have your education. You're going to have your health. You're going to have your friends. You're going to have your family. And these are not in order of importance. These are just things literally that come to your head quickly. All of these are important assets. What do you do with assets? You protect them, and you invest in them. You invest more in them. Okay? So, starting off, I'm just literally going in order. Education. I will say, most of you right now, education, you've gotten a very good education. I am convinced, I am totally convinced, that if you want to, at St. Bonaventure, you can get as good of education as any school in America. I am totally convinced of that. I told you before that when I graduated from here, I went to Rochester immediately. The next, started up in the fall, and I was thrown into a study group, cohort, with people from Harvard, from from Cornell, from Stanford, and I was absolutely as qualified as any of them. And I'm sure that all of you guys are. All too often, Bonus, because it's a small school, because it's in a small area of the world, we don't think of ourselves as being top-notch. And way too often, we let that go to our head. And we say, you know what, I don't need to do this extra work because, well, I'm at Bonus, it doesn't matter, right? Or we get the reputation of, we're a party school, we don't need... I had a student the other day, and I've never been so mad. The guy's a good friend of mine, but he told me he was glad he didn't go to a harder, or more challenging school. And I literally was like, you might as well just swear at me right now. That was the worst thing I've ever heard any student tell me. That it was just, it really infuriated me. Because here he was willing to settle. You don't want to settle on that. It's just too important. Don't settle. Education is important. Education is also ongoing. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But education doesn't stop. Your health. Obviously, if there's one thing we learned this semester, or I learned this semester, is that the health is the first and foremost thing. If you don't have your health, you may be a genius, you may be everything else. You will trade anything for your health. Don't forget that. Don't overlook it. Okay, lots of different things there. When you graduate, you're not going to have time to do things that you do now. Right? It is so difficult to work out after a long day of work. I can't do it. I mean, it drives me nuts. And you guys don't think I work. I understand. But no, I do. I do. A little, okay? But when you get home, it is so hard to go back out to work out. So find a solution. What's the solution? Work out before you go home. On the way home, stop before you get home, pack your bag in the morning, have your bag with you, stop, and then you don't think about it. All right? Look for solutions to problems. But health is a big one. Friends, I am convinced, and this sounds awful, I understand that, but your friends are big assets. You're going to rely on them a lot more than you think you need to. So invest in them. Facebook makes it easy. Facebook makes it almost too easy to keep in touch with people. But keep in touch with people. I said it for years. I always believed it, but I never felt it as much as this semester. When 10 years, 20 years, however many years down the road, your roommate today or your friend today loses a parent, or they have a daughter or a son who gets sick or something, go to them. Literally, don't say I need to leave. Don't say I can't because I have to work. Don't say I can't because something else. Go to them. It is much better to go and not be needed than to not go and be needed. It's a mantra of bound response, and I totally believe it. And I literally cannot tell you how much it meant for those of you who came to the funeral or sent me a text message or sent me a card or something and said, you know, hey, we're thinking about you. I never would have dreamt it meant as much to me as it did. So thank you from me, but also remember that when you guys go out and your friends are going to be in the same position. Those friends are more important than your job. Those friends are more important than, you know, something else. And clearly your family. I know some people, family members, I've been very lucky. We get along very well in my family. But there are some, make up with them. Right? Go home, make up with them, call them, do whatever. They should be your best friends. And somehow make sure that they are. After accounting, you also took marketing classes. And marketing often gets a bum rap. And I don't like it, because I was a marketing major as well, okay? And I really don't like it when some professors say it's all about cutting things out, because it's not. To this second, the hardest math class I ever took, I'm going to keep repeating that, was a marketing class. Okay? It was a marketing class at the University of Rochester where I was like, this is crazy difficult. It was all upper level SAS math, and it was tough. So marketing is important. I'm not going to get into the marketing research side of it today. But I will tell you that what do we know in marketing? We know that not just having a good product, that is clearly important. You need to have a good education. But just having it isn't enough. You also have to let people know. You have to be able to communicate. You might be great at finance, but if you can't put on a presentation, you can't do a quick talk to someone, it doesn't do any good, or it does very little good. So make sure you understand that aspect of it. Marketing, letting people know your product, and that comes into lots of plays. I mean, think about how much people invest, and companies invest, in their reputation. Reputation may be your biggest asset, right? Your reputation, if you get the asset of being a liar, a cheater, or a thief, no one wants to do business with you. No one wants to be your friend. That whole thing unravels. So make sure you understand that concept when we're going through this. Stats and statistics. You learned a lot. I'm going to tell you what I learned in stats. And it can be summarized with what I learned at playing high school baseball my freshman year at Archbishop Walsh. The coach there, and he was a great guy. I'm not going to say anything bad about him, especially because it's being recorded. His famous line, let's just say he wasn't the most educated guy, okay? But he taught me more about stats than I think anyone else did. He was talking about baseball, but he always said, he had this famous saying, play the percentages, play the percentages. So what does that mean? Well, it means stats. History does not repeat itself, right? Every time it doesn't repeat itself exactly. We have distributions on things. But you can play the percentages. We can learn from the past. First base, you may want to steal second if that's the go-ahead run. How do we know that? We judge it from the past. We see people have done it in the past successfully. We emulate that. We copy that. So stats are a big thing. We learn to make informed decisions. Management. And management was actually my undergraduate major when I started off. And I feel almost more at ease talking about management than anything else. And not finance, but anything other than finance. Management has two schools of thought here, two different branches of management. I think that both are important. One's the pure management science side. Right? The Frederick Taylor version of the world where everything is efficiency, and Frederick Taylor, I literally live this stuff. I mean, it drives me nuts when people are totally inefficient, to the degree at home, and I told this to my class yesterday and they laughed at me, but it's true. I moved into my mom's house, and I think I've told everyone that. I moved into my mom's house, and I moved where the bread was over next to the toaster. Because it was driving me nuts having to go from this side of it, it's a really small kitchen, but from here to here because it was inefficient. Okay, that's the Frederick Taylor side. That's the management science side. Optimization, etc. Really important. Be efficient. overall, lowest cost producer, most efficient is going to win in the end. We know that. The second part of management is sort of what I would call the org behavior side of the world. And this is the touchy-feely side of it. This is, I guess if we wanted one term to describe this, I would say leadership. This is the leadership side of the world. This is, and I don't know what it means to be a leader. I really don't. I guess it's sort of like, you just sort of sense it. You sort of know if someone is a leader or isn't a leader. But leaders are really important people. Much more important than we give them credit for in some cases. One leader can motivate a class. One leader can ruin a class if the leader is bad, or a business, or an organization. So leaders are really important. Be a leader. Yesterday on Facebook, someone posted on their wall, some people make you want to be a better person. And they thought that was like the coolest quote ever. That's the biggest compliment you can give to someone, according to this organization. Be that person. Be that leader that makes others want to be better. And we see it in sports all the time, right? We see how one person may not even be the best player on the team, but makes the team better just by being there. Everyone else does better. I mean, do we want to say it? Do we want to say T-ball? I don't know. But that idea, not a good player. I mean, realistically, I don't think he's that good. But he just wins. I don't get it. And I think that's what you want to be. You want to be that leader that just takes people beyond what they think they're capable of doing. What else do ones haven't I hit? BIS. Oh, big one. Big one. I don't even know where to begin on this one. This has evolved so quickly and so fast. I will just say be at the forefront. Do not be a laggard in computers, be in technology. You have to be at the forefront. It will open more doors for you and do more ability. It allows you to leverage all of these assets that you have. If not, you might be really great in a small world. With technology, you can be really great everywhere. You talk about scalability. Scalability is a problem at some levels, but here you can use it to your advantage. And it goes so fast. It is never, ever changing. I mentioned a couple minutes ago, if you had asked me on Sunday if I was going to be writing apps on Monday, I would have been, there was absolutely no chance. Literally, things change, things evolve so quickly in the technology field. This is essentially our new world of exploration, and be there, be at the forefront. The downside of this world is that the world has gotten a lot flatter, and we are now in a lot more competition than we ever were in before. If you have not read, I'm hoping you've all read, and in my mind you've all read, even though I realize you probably haven't. Read The World is Flat. It's an older book. The World is Flat was written probably 8 years ago. It is still, to this day, one of the more important books on how to think about what the business world is like. The shortest of short versions of the story is that a generation or two ago, you could be a really average person in the United States and have a really good standard of living. You would have to be a genius. You would be better. That average person in the United States was better than a genius in most developing nations, in China, India, wherever. Okay? That's no longer true. We are now in competition with those people wherever they are, and they are in competition with us. And competition might be too strong, but we're both looking at the same jobs. We have to find ways to team up and work with each other. Really simple example from personal life. I always, for the first 5 years I was here, I always hired an assistant, whatever you want to call it. Someone who would come to my office, would be working with me on papers, etc., etc., etc. Always did it. Last couple of years I haven't. And I don't know why I didn't. It's basically I tried and no one was interested. It just didn't work. This past year I started it up again. And in fact, I've gone to the extreme now. I have 3 people working for me. Okay? None of them from here. One from Bangladesh, one from Pakistan, and one from Colorado. The world is flat. It doesn't matter where you are anymore. You can work, you can communicate, you can contribute across the globe in lots of different ways. Finance. And we literally, I think I did 10 bullet points on finance. Lots of things we learned in finance. And how much time? I'm running out of time, but some of them. Compounding is important. Compounding is very important. Have it work for you, not against you. What does that mean? Save early, save often. Start up early, saving as soon as you can, and save as much as you can. Put on autopilot. Transaction costs, market inefficiencies, all of that stuff, they matter, especially when it comes from our behavioral side. We know we're not going to save. I mean, we know it's sort of like you have to work out before you go home. You have to save before you go home. You have to save. As soon as you get that money, you're going to spend it. You're going to find 18 million things to spend it for. When you go to your job, your first day on the job, they're going to ask you all this paperwork, your 401k plans, etc. Easy answer. Save the maximum you're allowed to. Always. Save them, even though it's going to be tough, you might have to have a roommate, save the most you can. Start off with that, and then worry about everything else afterwards. You will find ways to make the other payments. You will not find ways to make payments to yourself. Markets are pretty efficient. If something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Product markets, financial markets are pretty good. They're not perfect. Realize that. Go at things with the aspect of, wait, this sounds too good. What's the catch? Why is it too good? Be skeptical. I'm not saying be totally skeptical, but at least worry about it a little. Governance matters. Constraints matter. We sometimes impose constraints and governance on our own selves as well. That's something that we need to deal with. We don't have perfectly rational investors. We are not perfectly rational all the time. Think long term. Think reputation. Protect those assets. You're a shareholder. Your education is worth more than it is worth right now. It is worth the compound over time. All that, the present value of all that you're going to get from that education. The present value of all you're going to get from your reputation, etc. Protect those things. Debt. Debt makes good times great and bad times horrible. We've seen it at companies. It's also true in personal life. Don't take on tons of debt just because you can. The bank says you're allowed to borrow so much. Well, that's great. You're not required to borrow so much. That does help at times. I'm not saying don't get that. Just realize the problems with it. Diversification. Amazingly important. Diversification is good on lots of levels. Okay? And I don't just mean from a portfolio perspective and investments. Diversify. Don't get so... I want you to specialize. Clearly specialization is important. Be really good at something. But let's suppose, I feel sorry for them. I really, really feel sorry, and I hope this doesn't hit any of your parents, but it may, I don't know. But think about the steelworkers in Buffalo or wherever. They were really good steelworkers. They were wonderful steelworkers. They graduated from high school, they went in, and they were the best steelworkers in the world. And that's all they knew. And then what happened? They closed down. We didn't need them anymore. Right? How horrible is that? At that point, they have to be retrained completely. The world changes so much faster now. You don't want to be in that, I can only do this. Because this may not be needed anymore. So while you're specializing, keep your ears open for other things. It's also interesting. Major breakthroughs usually come from someone from outside the field. No matter what it is, whether it's sports, whether it's whatever. Usually the major breakthroughs comes from someone outside the field because they're not trained to look at it the same way. They're more open to changes. And so be looking at lots of different things at any given point. Always keep learning. Those are one of the main ones. Investment's important. So that's it for finance. I guess to conclude, and I am running out of time. I guess I'm over. Be confident. I think you guys really did get a good education. I'm very confident that you can all do whatever you want. Realize that you did come from St. Bonaventure, and there's a lot good, but there are some bad things about it. Most people haven't heard about St. Bonaventure yet. But what does that mean? It doesn't mean you're not going to get the job. But it might mean you have to knock on a few more doors than other people would. The door's not going to open immediately just because you say, oh, I'm from St. Bonaventure. Someone says, oh, great, you're hired. That's not going to happen. They've heard of Harvard. They haven't heard of St. Bonaventure. But once you get the job, you're on equal footing. So work hard when you get the job. Keep that in mind, though. You may have to work a little harder to get the job. Have fun. And I know this is a tough one, and I don't want to say it too much, so some of you might take it the wrong way. But have fun. Life is really short, and I think we see that every day. People you love, people you lose them, etc. So have fun. It doesn't matter. I could pay you $1 million for a job. If it's no fun, it's not worth it. Literally, I had a friend at Penn State who was working on Wall Street for about $400,000 a year and quit, and went back to teaching. And the reason was because it wasn't any fun. And he was getting, a fifth of what he used to get. But the reason was because it just wasn't any fun anymore. have fun. Tony Annunziato a few years ago was talking about if you like your job, you'll never have to work a day in your life. And I think there's a lot to that. Money is important, but it doesn't solve all the world's problems. I can tell you from firsthand experience, if I had had $100 million this year, and it wouldn't have changed a single thing of anything that happened this semester at all. I couldn't. $100 million wasn't going to save someone's life. $100 million, I would still probably want to teach. I can't imagine not wanting to teach. I can't imagine not wanting to do bond response. I cannot imagine not, wanting to work out, etc. Money is not going to be the deciding factor. There is a great book. It's called Drive. There's a video. I think we saw it. I know we saw it in behavioral. Watch the video, and it talks about what money does is takes the worries off the table. So you need some amount. I get that. You need, you need to have enough money that you don't have to worry about your next meal. But at the same token, after that, find something you like to do. Whether it's finance, I hope. Whether it's rock climbing, I don't care. Find something you like to do and do it. It's simple. It really, you will enjoy it more. You will be much better at it than suffering and saying, oh, Chuck Schumer, when he comes, I don't know if he's coming this year. He always comes as a surprise speaker after graduation, it seems like. He always talks about the same thing, and you hear him every year. It gets sort of boring, but his two things are pretty interesting. He talks about tests that you have to take, and your tests are not done yet. You have two important tests that you have to take every single week. You have to take the Sunday night test, and the Sunday night test is, how do you feel on Sunday night? Do you think, oh, no, I got to go to work tomorrow, right? Because that's not how you should feel. You should say, well, good, tomorrow. If you hate Mondays, you hate 1/7 of the week. You don't want to hate Mondays. The other test is the Friday night test. The Friday night test is what? Oh no, I got to go home to the family, right? So you don't want that one either. So both tests are pretty important. Find something you like to do and do it. And I think, think long term, and just have fun. And I think, if you work hard, have fun, you'll be fine. And I hope you had some fun in this class. I try to make it fun. I realize we could have gotten through more work if I had said, okay, you read this one, and read this one, and this one, but then the fun sort of disappears. So you have to have some mix of fun and work. And if you can bring the two together, home run. And I think that's what I hope for all of you. Please stay in touch. I hope most of you get involved at some point with Bond Response. It's the one thing that you don't need to be a student here. I know many of you didn't when you were in school here, but I would hope you do at some point. And again, just speaking personally, I love everything. I love teaching. I love working at the store. You couldn't, like I said, if I won $100 million, I don't think I would change any of the things I do. But the one thing I know with absolute certainty, the last thing, if I had to give up something, I would give up teaching, I would give up the store. The one thing I would not want to give up is Bond Response, because it is literally the most fun thing I do. And it is an absolute blast every single weekend, whether we're doing something with 500 people or whether we're doing something with 3 people. It is almost always the highlight of my day. I hope you guys find something like that. So, all right, thank you, and see you guys on Saturday. Is that right? Saturday?